She said, "You need to sell your immature comic book collection for our future." I replied, "You're right, it's time to grow up." She was thrilled, until she saw what I bought with the money. Asterisk asterisk. She stood in the doorway of our apartment, staring at my bookshelf like it personally offended her. My carefully preserved, graded comic books, each one a piece of my childhood, my identity, were just clutter to her. "You need to sell your comic book collection," she said, arms folded, voice laced with condescension. "It's immature. We're planning a future. It's time you grew up." To her, they were just stories with capes and masks. To me, they were the reason I survived childhood. The spark that got me through anxiety, through loneliness. My first lessons in justice, in courage, in never backing down. But I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're right. It's time to grow up." And the way her face lit up, smug and triumphant, you'd think she'd just won something. She didn't realize. She just lit the fuse. Because I did sell the collection. Every single issue. Boxed and shipped with care to buyers across the country. But not for a house deposit. Not to pay down her student loans. Not to upgrade our kitchen or book the overpriced wedding venue she'd circled in magazines. I used the money for something else. Something she never saw coming. Something that would make her realize that growing up doesn't mean surrendering who you are. It means finally choosing yourself. Even if it means leaving someone who never truly understood you behind. We'd been living together for almost a year when the subtle digs started. At first, it was just small comments. Asterisk, "Don't you think the living room would look better without all those action figures?" Asterisk or asterisk, "Do you really still read this stuff?" Asterisk, I laughed it off. I'd heard it before. I didn't expect her to get my love for comics, but I figured she respected it. I mean, it's not like I was blowing rent money on new issues. I had a carefully curated high-value collection that I'd spent over a decade building. But to her, it was always kid stuff. A phase I was supposed to have grown out of, like skateboards or sugary cereal. Then one evening, out of nowhere, she said it, completely serious, no humor in her voice. "You need to sell your comic book collection. It's immature. We need to focus on our future." I sat there stunned for a second. The "we" was doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence, especially since the future she was talking about looked more like her fantasy than our reality. White picket fence life, overpriced wedding, new furniture, matching bathrobes. All funded by me selling off the one part of myself that had been with me longer than she had. But I didn't argue. I just smiled and said, "You're right. It's time to grow up." And man, she looked thrilled. She thought she'd just won. Like she'd finally tamed the nerd out of me and reshaped me into her Pinterest-perfect fiancé. She went out for drinks with her friends that night and actually bragged about it. He's finally letting go of all that childish stuff. He's ready to be a man. The irony? That collection was a product of being a man. I'd worked overtime shifts to afford key issues. Hunted down signed editions. Protected every book with gloves and sleeves. It wasn't a bunch of comic books. It was a curated archive. A reflection of discipline, focus, and passion. Traits she claimed she wanted in a partner. But all she saw were cartoons and plastic sleeves. So I started packing. Bit by bit, I sold the collection off, privately, through collectors, online auctions, some even to old friends who knew what they were worth. And while she daydreamed about using that money to book a wedding venue or remodel the kitchen, I stayed quiet. I didn't correct her when she assumed the funds were ours. I didn't argue when she said she'd help decide how to spend it. I let her believe she was the captain now. Because what she didn't realize was, I was growing up. Just not in the direction she had planned. She thought selling the collection meant I was finally choosing her. But really, it was the first step toward choosing me. Once the collection was gone, the shift in her attitude was almost immediate. She walked around the apartment like a queen who'd conquered new territory. Her victory parade was subtle but smug. She started rearranging furniture, ordering those overpriced minimalist shelves she always wanted, and tossing my leftover posters in the donate pile like they were trash. She told her friends I was finally maturing, and they nodded in approval, clinking glasses in group chats and sending clapping emojis like she'd fixed me. I let her have it. What she didn't know was that while she was daydreaming about new curtains and matching cookware, I was watching the numbers in my account rise with every sold issue. I kept a spreadsheet. Every signed copy, every rare variant, listed, tracked, sold. $42,000. That's what it all came to. Clean. Untouched. Mine. And she hadn't asked once where the money was going. She just assumed. She'd already started talking about wedding photographers. Mentioned touring venues that I had never agreed to. Once, she casually said, I mean, with the comic book money, we could finally afford the Tuscany honeymoon. I smiled. Didn't say a word. She was too busy making plans to notice that I hadn't joined a single one of her Pinterest boards. I hadn't followed a single vendor she tagged. I hadn't even taken time off work for a wedding. Because in my head, this was never about proving I loved her. This was about proving something to myself. All those years I poured into collecting, that was passion, discipline, investment. I didn't throw that away. I converted it. And with every item sold, I saw something even better forming in its place. Freedom Star. One day, I left my laptop open on the kitchen counter by mistake. She walked in, sipping coffee, scrolling through emails when she stopped mid-sip. What's this? She asked, pointing at the lease agreement on my screen. It was for a creative studio downtown. A little raw space with brick walls, natural light, and room for something I'd always dreamed of building. My own creative lab. A place where I could write, storyboard, maybe even launch my own indie comic line someday. I looked at her calmly and said, That's what I bought. She blinked, confused, then angry. You spent all that money on this? And for the first time, I didn't flinch. You told me to grow up, I said. So I invested in something that actually means something to me. She stood there speechless, the Tuscany fantasy crashing around her. It wasn't the money. It was the control. The narrative. She thought she'd rewritten me, and now the plot had taken a turn she didn't author. She thought I'd be grateful for her pushing me to grow up. She thought growing up meant surrendering. But what she didn't understand is, growing up doesn't mean letting go of who you are. It means finally choosing who you won't be for someone else. She didn't talk to me for 2 full days after that. No texts. No passive-aggressive questions. Just cold silence in the apartment. The kind that clings to everything. She slammed cabinets louder. Took phone calls in the bedroom and didn't close the door, like I was supposed to hear her sighing and laughing to prove she had other people. But I didn't take the bait. I spent those 2 days moving forward. I met with a contractor to fix up the studio space, signed off on an interior layout for my work desk, and even booked a consultation with an indie illustrator I'd followed for years. It was the kind of productive silence that feels like fuel. Then, on the 3rd night, she cracked. So that's it, she said, leaning against the wall while I was reviewing design drafts. You just spent everything you had on this little man cave? I looked up slowly. It's not a man cave. It's a studio. My studio. She scoffed. You're not some comic book mogul. You think this is going to make money. I smiled, calm, unbothered. That's not the point. I didn't sell my collection to become rich. I sold it to start something. Something that's mine. Something I don't need your approval to believe in. And that's when it hit her. She wasn't upset about the money. She was upset because I didn't need her to validate the decision. I didn't ask permission. I didn't seek her opinion. I didn't even include her in the conversation. She thought this entire thing, the collection, the selling, the next step, was supposed to be a shared narrative. But I'd taken the pen back. Later that week, while she was at brunch with her friends, I moved the rest of my stuff out of the apartment. Quietly. No drama. No speech. Just one final action in a long line of choices she never thought I'd make for myself. By the time she came home, my key was on the counter, and the lease transfer paperwork was in her inbox. She called me twice. I didn't answer. Finally, she texted, "I can't believe you threw everything away for this stupid dream." I read it, then deleted it. Because she was right about one thing. I did throw something away. Not the dream. Not the collection. Not the money. I threw away the version of myself that needed her approval to feel like a man. And what I bought with that money wasn't just a studio. It was my exit. My independence. My quiet, powerful revenge. Not through anger. Not through pettiness. Just by building a life that no longer had space for someone who treated my passion like a phase. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Word spread faster than I expected. At first, I thought she'd keep it private, bury the embarrassment, and pretend like it was a mutual parting. But no. Instead, she started spinning a version of events where I was the reckless one. He wasted the money on some fantasy. I pushed him to grow up and he blew it all on comics again. He threw away our future for a hobby. She couldn't stand the idea that I walked away with dignity, that I didn't collapse or chase her. So she painted me like a fool to anyone who would listen. But then something happened that blew her version of the story to pieces. I posted a single photo on Instagram. Black and white. Tastefully filtered. Just me, holding the keys in front of the glass door of my new creative studio. The caption: "Sold my past to invest in my future. Watch this space." Within hours, old friends were reaching out. Former classmates. Artists. Writers. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me to say how inspired they were. A local comic shop asked if I'd host a creative workshop. A small indie publisher commented, "Let's talk." Meanwhile, she was stuck answering questions from people who knew me. People who knew this wasn't impulsive. This was deliberate. Focused. She tried damage control, claiming I was obsessed with proving something. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't watching. I wasn't responding. I had already moved on. One afternoon, a mutual friend called me, someone who hadn't taken sides. He said she broke down crying after seeing the response my post was getting. She kept saying, "That should have been our life. We should have built that together." But she never wanted to build anything with me. She wanted to mold me into something that fit her world. And now, for the first time, she was seeing what my world looked like without her. She came to my studio once. Uninvited. I was sketching out a new layout for a comic pitch when I saw her standing just outside the glass, staring in like she didn't recognize me anymore. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and simply said, "You said I needed to grow up. This is what that looks like." She didn't say anything. She just nodded, eyes wet, and walked away. That moment wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was closure. Because she finally understood something I'd known from the second she told me to sell the childish things. The only thing immature in our relationship was thinking love meant control. And the most grown-up thing I ever did was walk away before I became a stranger to myself. Weeks passed. My studio had life now. Bare walls were covered in concept art, rough sketches, color tests, and storyboards. The air smelled like ambition and coffee. I was collaborating with 2 local artists, and we were deep into developing a 5-issue indie comic run. Small steps, but real ones. Tangible. Forward. And I was finally happy. Not the fake, forced kind of happy I used to put on for her. Not the, "I'm compromising but it's fine" kind. This was different. This was fulfillment. Peace. Purpose. Then, as expected, the message came in. Late at night. A long paragraph. "I've been thinking about everything. I didn't mean to make you feel like your passions didn't matter. I was scared. I just wanted stability. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I was wrong." I didn't respond. Because it wasn't an apology. It was a regret letter dressed up in nostalgia. What she wanted was not to fix things, but to go back. Back to a time when she had control. Back to when she could edit the script of my life. But I don't do reruns. The next day, I launched my studio's official online page. Announced the upcoming comic project. It gained traction fast. A local blog wrote a piece about my story, asterisk, from collector to creator, how one man sold his past to fund his dream. Asterisk, the post went semi-viral. That was the final nail. Mutual friends told me she'd gone silent. Embarrassed. Confused. Angry, even. Not because I'd failed, but because I'd thrived without her. And here's the irony. She thought asking me to sell the collection would force me to grow up. That it would break the child in me so I could become her version of a man. But what she never realized was, I was never immature. I was passionate, driven, creative, and quietly powerful in ways she never understood. Selling the comics didn't change me, it freed me. She thought she was stripping away my distractions. What she really did was remove the only anchor that was keeping me attached to her version of who I was supposed to be. Now, I get to wake up every day building stories I love. I get to work with people who see me. And I get to do it all without asking for anyone's permission. So, if she's out there still wondering what I bought with the money she thought would be used for our future, tell her I bought peace, purpose, and the life she never believed I could have without her.